Hey, everybody, this is Chrissy Moore with Broken Beautiful Ministries, and we are so excited to have you back with us. This month, we actually have a very special guest, and we are very, very excited for this topic. But before we get into the topic, I just want to introduce my best friend and my co host, Holly Ibarra.
Hey everyone, this is Holly from Set Free Ministries, and we are very excited to have this young lady with us today. She is my best friend's daughter and my adopted daughter. She's stuck with me forever.
And we're so excited, guys. I'm going to give you an opportunity. This is my daughter, of course, Jessica Moore, uh, aka Jess,
Or
um,
Jackie.
or Jackie, or Mom. But anyhow, we are so excited that she has graciously come on the show to share her testimony. She did get to share her testimony on my Broken Beautiful Hero page,
Hmm.
and that was powerful. A lot of people
Yes,
read it, a lot of
yes.
people made comments on it, and they were so thankful for her transparency. But today we have her on the podcast so that she can actually speak into other young women's lives,
Hmm.
and share with everybody what God did for her. So, before we get started, let me go ahead and announce the topic of our podcast today, and then I'll introduce Jessica. So, today's podcast is called A Letter from the Heart of a Virgin, Purity on Purpose.
Amen.
So, Jessica Moore, will you introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, I'm Jess. Obviously, I'm Chrissy Moore's daughter. Um, but yeah, I'm 20 years old now. I'm going to school. I've got a 2-year-old. I've got a little family, so got my hands pretty busy. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're
Oh,
here.
yes.
We're excited because we've talked about this. I think we've talked about this a lot, and we don't want you to be nervous because at the end of the day, it's just a conversation.
Yeah, it's just us.
It's just us. But let me just share a little bit of background with our listeners to get you revved up and prepared to move forward. So, most of you have heard my testimony, and I've shared a lot about how my late husband was abusive, but he also sexually abused me, and he sexually abused Jess. So, from you've heard it from my perspective, but you've never actually heard it from her perspective. So, I want her to just, we're not going to go deep, deep, deep into certain situations, but we
Right,
want to go deep enough
right,
so that you can hear the redemption
right. And the redemption is amazing.
is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jess, why don't we go back a little bit and let's start with what happened when you were a little girl. How old were you when the abuse started?
Okay, so I was 11 years old when I started getting sexually abused by my birth father, which is pretty crazy to most people because it's normally a stepfather or, an uncle, somebody that you aren't really close to. Um, but yeah, this happened for 9 months, so many times in a day that he would have been locked up in prison for the rest of his life. So yeah, it's just been a process of healing, and I'm learning every day. More things that I need healing from. So yeah, it's been a process.
Different layers.
Yeah, different layers. Yeah,
Different layers.
just the other
Yeah.
day I had a trigger actually, and it was just like I was just laying in bed, looking at furniture, and it just kind of triggered me, for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how the enemy brings those thoughts back into your head. It's like a video that can't turn off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes triggers are also telling us that there's still areas in our life that we need healing.
Yeah,
And that was important that you said that because, um, and if you can, obviously explain what the trigger was because a lot of women are out there wondering how how did you deal with the abuse at such a young age? What did you do to cope with that?
I think initially I was just in shock mode for a really long time. But going back to my trigger that I had the other day, I was looking at furniture, and um, whenever my dad used to, touch me and do what he would do, I would try to kind of, I guess, distract myself. And so I would look at the pillars that were on the bed. And when I was online, I saw bed furniture that had pillars on the bed. And so my heart just kind of stopped, and I didn't know what to do, how and like where to go from there. But I just knew that I was getting anxiety about it, because whenever you're going through abuse, you try to zone out and make sure that you're not thinking about what's actually happening. So mine would be looking at the ceiling, it'd be looking at the wall, closing my eyes, turning my head so I didn't even have to see anything being done to me. So yeah, I just had to take a deep breath, and I had to remember that I'm not at that place anymore, and my abuser is not abusing me anymore, and I had to, just kind of stay strong, even though it was a little bit. Nobody knew I was going through it too,
Right,
like I
right.
was laying right next to my boyfriend. Sounds so weird, but yeah, we were laying down looking at furniture, and just like he didn't know that I had that trigger,
Right,
and so I had
right.
to kind of battle it within myself. Um, but yeah, just kind of taking a deep breath and knowing that I'm not at that place anymore is what kind of got me through. So
Amen.
That's actually a good point, because so many of us that have gone through any type of abuse, whether it's sexual, mental, psychological, a trigger can come by a smell.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Let's talk about what a trigger is.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
yeah,
So go ahead and explain what a trigger
Yeah, like
could be.
as you were starting to say, it could be a smell. It could be just looking at a picture. It could be um, like maybe the way someone looks, like their resemblance to someone, to the abuser, automatically makes you think that they're exactly the same.
Right.
There
That's a
could
good
be all
one.
kinds of triggers.
Yeah, so there's a song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For a long time, we saw the same vehicle that he drove.
Yeah.
So that was a trigger for us, because we would sit there and go, oh my gosh, that's his truck, that's his truck. And it
Yeah.
wasn't his
Yeah.
truck, but it was, to us, it was his truck. So is he
Right.
still alive? Did he really die? Is this a joke?
Right.
Stuff
Right.
like that. So I just want to encourage you out there, Jess made a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
When a trigger comes, the battle is within yourself
Right.
to get past that. And for her to be able to get past that trigger, you have two choices. Number one, you get stuck in the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Or number two, you can speak to yourself and say, "That's I'm not there.
Right.
I'm not at that place anymore."
So, yeah, Jess, did you tell your fiance what had happened, or
um,
did you?
at the moment I didn't.
Yeah.
It took me, I think, 2 or 3 days to process it within myself.
Yeah.
Mention it to my mom, because she always, keeps me level-headed, and for the most part, we try to, help each other out with things like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I told him a few days later, and he was, he's just like, "I'm so sorry, Jess. Like, I didn't know."
Yeah. You had
Because
no
it's
idea.
something
Mm-hmm.
so simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's bed furniture,
Right.
But the enemy distorted that for me, because that had to be my outlet, because I didn't want to look at someone who was abusing me,
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, it was just, it's crazy, I think, for other people to hear it. When you actually verbalize it to other people, even yourself, you're kind of like, man, that's really stupid, that I had a trigger about a bed furniture, but like at the only time, that was what helped
Yeah.
me,
No.
So yeah, he was just kind of appalled by it, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's hard for our listeners, because a lot of women who are sexually abused are abused by their stepfathers, their uncles, um, cousins, friends,
Right.
and this was the birth father.
Mm-hmm.
So it was traumatic. It was traumatic for all of us. But because you were able to get past that trigger, I really believe that that's a huge part of your healing
Yeah. Huge
process.
step forward.
Yeah. So let's move forward a little bit and talk about. So let me just kind of bridge the gap real quick. Um, after we fled our home, and I found out that she had been sexually abused, we fled our home, and he, to make a long story short, he winded up committing suicide. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
we're going to fast forward a little bit, because we need a place to go. We need to find healing, and we landed at a church where we really believed that this is where God had called us, because we needed to be surrounded.
Right.
by people that would help us, or we thought that would help us.
Right, right. You thought it was a safe place.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. We don't have any family up here.
Mhm.
All our families in the Rio Grande Valley, and so they were the ones going. You got to go to a church. You got to go to a church.
Right.
And just to give you a little synopsis, up to that point, we weren't allowed to go to church.
He wouldn't let you.
He was not letting us attend church. He didn't
Mhm.
want us to go to church, and so for 8 years, we didn't go to any church where we once left a church back home
Right.
and served in heavily in ministry. We
Mhm.
moved up here and weren't allowed to go to church. So we're going to fast forward, and we got to a church, and I want Jess to share this portion of her testimony because it all ties into the healing that God has done in your life, right?
Yeah. So whenever everything happened with my dad, I felt, that my innocence was gone and my purity was gone. And he kind of ripped everything except for one thing from me. I was never sexually assaulted by my dad. He never had any penetration. So for me, I was like, gosh, that's one thing I can hold on to.
Right.
That is mine, and that's going to be mine until it's for my husband. Um, so after my dad died, I met a guy that actually went to the church that we went to go seek healing from.
Right.
And I was in such a vulnerable state. My dad had just committed suicide, and so I was really looking for that love and affirmation, so
Mhm.
like pure because my heart needed that.
Right.
Like I just totally desired that.
How old were you?
I was 13 at this point, and I believe 13 or 14.
I think it was almost 14.
Yeah.
14.
And so, yeah, I made a connection with this guy. I thought that I loved him and I trusted him. And then, obviously, the conversation about sex came up, and it was the one thing that I wanted to keep, for myself because. I mean, when you're a woman,
Right.
like that's the one gift because when you get married, it's like, okay, awesome, I'm married. But the whole point about being married is being able to, have your marriage bed,
Right.
and give something to your spouse. But yeah, so one Sunday morning, he wanted me up in the women's baptismal at church. And so I met him up there, and that's kind of where everything played out. Um, And then he walked away, told me to get dressed, and left me there bloody and messy. And so he didn't, it was something that I didn't imagine that it would happen that way.
And you weren't planning
I
on that?
wasn't planning, yeah, because I wanted that for my husband. So I wanted to say no, but at the same time, I didn't know how because I wanted him to love me still,
Mhm.
because after my dad died, I was such like in a seeking mode for affirmation and love from a male figure that I didn't know how to say no to something when, like, if I did, I thought he wouldn't love me anymore, and I thought that would be the end of that. And so yeah, that's been it. Also, it happened during a worship service at church, and so when that happened, I kind of was just sitting there like, man, because you could see the worship from the women's baptismal, you could see everybody down there worshiping,
Mhm.
and I looked over there and I was like, if this can happen to me in a worship service at church in God's house, then like obviously he doesn't care for me, he doesn't love me enough to stop this. So at that point, worship for me was dead. And I didn't technically know that worship was dead for me until I actually got healing from that. So I was just kind of going through the motions, just the everyday,
Just
Christian,
living life.
living the life. Yeah, going to church on Sundays, praising, putting my hands up, and in my heart, I was like, I could really care less about being here because he could really care less about helping me out and not, making me go through these things.
So you
So
were.
let me back up just a minute, just so that our listeners get the full understanding of what you're saying, because it's very just sitting over here.
I'm getting really angry.
It's emotion. It's
Yeah, it's
emotional.
emotional. Mhm.
It's emotional because as a parent, you feel vulnerable. You feel like,
Mhm.
God, I missed the first one, and now I missed the second one too.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't there to protect her. But I want you to touch on, because I want our listeners, our women, to know some of them have been in that situation where they have been maybe sexually assaulted and they didn't, what led up to it. So when you are vulnerable and you're not at a healthy place and you haven't been healed,
Hmm.
there's something called manipulation.
Yeah.
Manipulation. And when you come into a church and you're looking for a safe place, I just wanted you to go there to let them or help them understand, why do you think you felt safe with this person? What were the attributes? What was he saying to you that you felt? You know what I'm
Yeah, I
saying?
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad obviously didn't want us to go to church, and so on the offside, I tried to look for a man that was in church. I tried to look for someone who said the right things and made me feel safe.
Hmm.
And so this man, him and his family were huge pillars in the church, and so I was like, yes, like I found someone who's going to keep me safe, and we're going to go to church, and I'm going to get healing, and I was just
He's going
so
to respect
excited. Yeah,
you
he's
and
going to
treat you
respect
like
me.
the woman of God that you are.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Hmm.
treat me, like I'm supposed to be treated. So I was so excited and so ready for that. And so I was hugely disappointed because that's not the case at all. And so my hope in churchmen kind of went away as well, just because um, it was a lot of manipulation. It was saying all the right things, like I love you and let's worship God together. Like that is always a piercing in my heart. Like, oh, when a guy says, let's go to church together, let's,
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
God and do this journey together. It's like, holy cow, I really wish my dad like could have been like that, because then we wouldn't be in this position that we are in at the moment.
Right, right. And so when he said that, basically, it brought healing to your heart. But and ladies, just so you know, not all men are like that.
Right.
Yes, I'm not bashing all churchmen. Sorry.
No, no, that's okay. I mean, it's okay to be transparent. Not
Yeah.
all men are like that. Not all churchmen are like that. However, in this particular situation, I felt he saw the vulnerability.
Hmm.
We were very open and candid about where we came from,
Right.
what kind of healing we were seeking. It wasn't a secret to anybody. And unfortunately, their family knew a lot of our information because they wanted to help.
Right. You thought. Yeah.
I thought.
Hmm.
It's exactly right. And because of that, I believe that he took your innocence um, and twisted it for his
Hmm.
own, I don't even know what to call it,
Yeah.
wicked
Wicked desires or
wicked
whatever.
desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially during the worship. So let's go ahead and fast forward, because now this has happened. You don't want to go to church. I'm over here, let's go to church, Jess. And you're
I'll
like,
go.
okay,
Yeah.
you would go with me. But none of us knew what was going on.
Yeah.
You still went to church and went through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
So in my eyes, you were okay,
Right.
and it's also to help those parents out there that not saying that anything's wrong with your kids, but if they don't want to go, seek a little deeper and find out what's going on, ask questions. I didn't ask questions because I
Y-
just
y-
assumed everything looked good.
And you were healing too. You were working
Yeah.
through your healing
Yeah,
as
you have your
well.
own process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my own process. So before we move on to this next part, we're just going to take a very, very, very short break so that we continue with the next segment of Jess's testimony.
And you're checking out live from Houston, Texas to the world.
Houston, Texas, to the world.
We're global. We are global. We are international. We are
And we're
FlowRadioNetwork.com.
back. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
back.
everyone.
And okay, so Jess, we're going to move forward a little bit. And as far as the after the baptismal assault, because that's basically what it was. A lot of this. So let me just get something out there, and I want Holly's take on it.
Okay.
When a woman says no,
Yeah.
it's no.
It's no.
It is rape.
Yeah.
However, many people feel like because you don't say it out of your mouth, but your whole body is saying no,
Yeah.
that it's still not a no, that she asked for it, she wanted it to happen. And I want you to speak to that, because I know there's got to be a lot of women going, I couldn't say no, but my body was saying everything but yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that, Chrissy, because when I was younger, I was promiscuous. Let's just put it that way. And I thought that was the only way I was going to be accepted. Um, so I always think back. I should have said no. I should have not been seeking that type of attention as well. But I was seeking that attention. In this case, Jess wasn't seeking that attention.
Right.
She was no.
No. But they're telling you things like, well, we're going to get married anyway. Is that, and I think that's good to be able to share that too, because it paralyzed you.
Right. He's saying all the right things that he knows that you wanted to hear.
And so you kept saying he said all the right things. So let's go ahead and just kind of voice those out. What were the things that were being said that really put you in that paralyzed state?
First and foremost is I love you. I love you to a girl is very, I don't know, that touched my heart, because I know growing up, my mom and my dad were always like, love and hate are two strong words that you should not say to everybody. And so when somebody would tell me that they loved me, I'm like, you must not say that to everybody, right? That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah, you thought he was raised with the same definition that you were.
Yeah, and so obviously that's not true. Not everybody's raised like that. But so I kind of took that to heart for sure. And then other things like, it's okay, we're going to get married anyways, so why not have sex now, Because, I mean, if we're going to be married anyways, it doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to remember. I think that was the main one. That
main two things.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, I guess you're right. You know better than me, because he was very knowledgeable in all the Bible books. I had never opened up a Bible, even though I knew some verses because we grew up that way. But personally, I never knew anything, and he was always reading all the scriptures, the best in the youth, and I'm like, okay, well, I should trust you because you know better than me.
Right.
He was a leader.
Yeah, he was a leader. So I figured, well, I mean, you know more,
Yeah. So I just want to, those of you ladies who, in your heart, you were screaming no, but didn't know how to voice it.
And how to break away.
How to break away for fear.
Right.
Or, you could, it could be tons of stuff. It could be fear.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the fact that maybe he is right.
Right.
Maybe no one else is going to want me.
Right.
And he is going to marry me. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to do this. I never even know how to say no to my dad.
Right. I don't want to lose him. Like you said, I don't want to lose him, so I'm going to do whatever he says.
Right. But at the end of the day, if it was no, whether it's your body
or your words, mm-hmm.
it's still no.
It's still no.
So from this point, it was a couple of years, and we winded up leaving the church, and not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Just we were released. God released us from that place. We went to a different place, and just kind of talk about what happened there as far as your state of mind. Where were you at that point of your life, and how did we come to where we are now? Because we're going to lead up to, obviously, Liam, and we get to share about him.
Yeah.
There's our baby.
Yeah.
So when I left the church, I was at a very broken state because since the church did know where I came from and everything that my family had gone through,
Mm-hmm.
They kind of looked at me different and at my family different. And even though they wouldn't voice it, they would look at me different. And then when a couple things kind of got out into the open with this guy that I was with, like him pulling me into, I don't remember what it was called.
Like a storage room or something?
Yeah, he pulled me into a room, and everybody looked at me like it was my fault because I was sexually abused, so I wanted to have sex with people, and that was just my life, I mean, even a counselor.
Yeah, not true.
Yeah,
not true. Not true.
Even a counselor, when my dad had first died, told me that I'm either going to be super promiscuous or I'm going to hate men. And so thank God for a praying mom because I was neither. So But yeah, I was really at a broken state. I was so mad that these people, these church, God loving people, really just looked bad or looked down on me instead of actually seeking to find the truth about a man who was doing things to me under the house that they called home, you know.
Right.
And so I was very broken. I didn't want to be a part of, a church. I didn't want to go talk to church people. But a couple years passed, and, after everything that happened, I kind of just gave up. I was like, well, I'm not a virgin anymore, so I'm going to go like this guy that I met. We started sleeping together. I got pregnant. So there's Liam. Yay!
Which is a wonderful blessing. He's a
Yes.
wonderful baby.
But yeah, when I was doing all these things behind my mom's back, at the time, they didn't approve, who I was talking to. It was an older guy. And so it just kind of wasn't a good situation, especially when you do things behind your parents' back. I would recommend to not do them because obviously the truth always comes out.
Yes, it does.
And it came out in a pretty scary way for us,
I went rogue.
Yeah. She went crazy. And I don't blame her. Like, if it was Liam doing that to me, oh my God, I pray for the woman that, like, he's doing that with. Cause, but anyways, yeah, so I got pregnant, and
How old were you?
I was 17. I almost forgot. I was 17 when I got pregnant. And I heard of this thing called Embrace Grace. It was a place for pregnant women, unexpected pregnancies.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, I didn't really want to go because it was at Gateway Church. So I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be in a church pregnant without being married. Right. It was like the most scary experience ever. But my mom, continued to push me to go. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll just visit. And if I don't like it, I don't have to go back. I walked in those doors, and they just gave me the biggest hug. They told me how beautiful I was, and going from a church that was very negative, walking into another church that just embraced me was absolutely wonderful. I didn't even know how to take it. I was like, are you talking to me? Are you hugging me? Like, I'm pregnant. I'm not even doing all the right things. Why are you even, acknowledging my presence? So I ended up liking the first time, and I continued to go back, and God definitely gave me a lot of healing through there with my dad, and becoming pregnant actually led to a bunch of different healings.
So just so that we can kind of get to that place, because Embrace Grace was a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. The founder of Embrace Grace had actually spoken at a TKU church service where I attended, and this was a year prior. And I remember hearing her speak, and I thought, wow, that's awesome. That's just powerful. Little did I know that God was already setting me up for what was going to happen for the next year. So we'll back up just a little bit just so that our listeners know, because it wasn't that easy peasy. She found out she was pregnant and everything was like, oh, hunky-dory.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So we found out we're pregnant, and I say we because we walked this out together. I called Paul and Holly crying, mad, cussing, the whole 9 yards. Yes, I was cussing. I was mad. I was scared.
Yeah.
That's what it all stemmed from.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I told Jess was, I still had to allow her to make the choice because it was her choice. I encouraged her to keep the baby. And I said, if you keep the baby and they throw tomatoes at you, then they're going to throw them at both of us.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to get rid of the baby.
Amen.
She wanted to keep the baby. And even in my heart that I was scared. I had had an abortion at 17 years old. I didn't have people telling me, keep the baby, keep the baby.
I didn't either.
And so you make it a point.
It wasn't even an option for me to keep the baby.
Absolutely. Back then, it wasn't
It
an
wasn't
option.
the option. You're having it.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
It's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
You're going to shame the family.
Right.
Or worse.
Right.
Be called all these names under the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, okay, we decided together, you're keeping the baby. We're going to move forward.
Amen.
Was it easy? Let me just tell you guys, it was not easy. Jess and I had a lot of arguments, and maybe I mean, I think it's okay to share. We had a lot of arguments, and the one thing I told Jess was, you have to allow me to process this
Yeah.
because this is hard. And the one thing that she told me was, you have to allow me to process this because this is hard.
I
And it wasn't just her pregnancy.
Yeah.
It was all the healing that she never got.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It was all the healing you never got. So embrace grace. I remember that first day because, guys, I had to go with her, obviously. I went with her, walked in the door, and she walked in, and Selena just grabbed her and hugged her and held her and just was stiff as a board.
Yeah.
She was stiff as a board, looking like, oh my God, why are you touching me?
Who is
I was
this woman?
Scared, yeah.
I was scared. And another lady, she was so sweet. She's like, you are so yummy. You are just adorable. You're beautiful. I could just eat you up. And we were like, what the heck is going on here? But the love is what melted.
And it was real.
Yeah, love pierces the heart, So it's kind of like it was real. You're right. Like it was not, "Oh my gosh, hey, come out to our event." It was like, "I love you and I'm going to show you, not just with my words, but with my actions." And that's what the whole season of Embrace Grace was for me. Like it wasn't just words, it was always actions behind it, and actions is what gets you healing.
Right. It speaks louder than words.
It speaks way louder than words. So I was so grateful for that.
Yeah. And it brought a lot of healing to both of us. Paul and Holly walked it out with us.
Yeah, they kind of just from my perspective,
Yeah.
they kind of isolated. You guys kind of isolated yourself from us for a while.
Yeah.
Because I honestly don't remember Jess being big pregnant. I don't remember seeing her big pregnant. But then I was there right after Liam was born. So
We talked a lot on the
we talked a
phone.
lot on the phone, but they did go into a little bit of hibernation, isolation mode just to walk it out. And I completely understand now, why at the time I was like, okay, let me just give him space. I love him enough to give him space. But
And I think I personally kept myself private from especially like social media and Facebook, things like that, just because I wanted to like process, oh my goodness, I'm pregnant.
yeah,
And what is the world going to think about me now?
right.
Because my perception was always like all of these church people still looked at me like, well, this was bound to happen to her.
Exactly.
And, like, I mean, I didn't expect more, of her. So I was kind of just sitting there like, goodness, like I'm friends with all these people on Facebook and I'm going to post that I'm pregnant. Like, what are they going to say? But yeah, so I was kind of just like hiding myself.
Yeah.
And especially like with you guys, I didn't want to disappoint y'all either, because you guys were important in my life.
Yeah.
And so, it was just really rough.
The cool thing is that they didn't.
Yeah,
no,
no.
they didn't judge.
You guys were like, what does she need?
Yeah, what does she need?
What does she need? Is she okay? Is she doing okay? You constantly checked up on her. There wasn't that constant visitation, but the phone calls.
Yeah, we were
kept
still in touch. Yeah.
We kept in touch with our phone calls. And we walked out the process. And it led us up to, well, let me just back up. So the process was we fought. We yelled at each other.
She fought with my my baby daddy.
Yeah.
And the baby
guy who
daddy.
got her pregnant.
Yeah.
He was gracious enough, and maybe the word isn't gracious, but when I told him, you and I are going to talk, and that's just going to be it, and we went out to dinner, and he sat there and basically let me tear into him.
Yeah.
He allowed me to say everything that I needed to say to him, and he listened, and he didn't yell back at me. And that's where it came out that you were assaulted.
Yeah.
And so
You didn't know before then?
I did not know. So this is something we
wow.
wanted to share with I wanted to share with our listeners. So in the process of talking to Liam's daddy, we were at a restaurant and I'm ripping into him and Jess is just sitting there with her head looked down and I said, "You should have known better because he was a friend of the family." So he knew everything that we had gone through as well. So in my mind, I categorized him and put him with the assailant, from the church. And I said, she was a virgin and you should have waited. And he looked at me and he looked at her and he looked at me and he looked down and I went, "What's going on?"
She's like, "You are a virgin, right?" And I was like,
So I turned back. I said, weren't you a virgin?" And she just busted out crying. And that's the beginning of the healing.
Wow.
Because she just started, and I can let you explain because at that point, I think you even mentioned later, you were so relieved
to
that
tell
I
someone,
that
you know?
finally someone, and go ahead,
Yeah,
I'll let you share
like
that.
when you have something bottled up inside for so long, you just feel like you're gonna explode. You know, like I have to get this out because I didn't know, I didn't want to disappoint you, Mom. You know, and so even though it wasn't my fault, I still feel like it would have been a disappointment. You know, because your baby girl, like you know, is not a virgin anymore. Like how in the world could this have happened? You know, I also didn't want you to feel like it was any of your fault because it wasn't. You know. Um, you can't change those things, and I just didn't want you to take that blame on yourself because you'd already been going through all this crap from Dad that, you know, I didn't want one more thing on top of you. But yeah, she found out that way, and I just kind of I took a deep breath, and I was like, well, it's out in the open now, and just shared everything with her little by little, and yeah, it feels really good when you have something inside. You just need to break it out and say
Right.
something, you know.
And that's when the healing began
Yeah.
because, and just so that our listeners understand, the Bible does say to be angry and sin not.
Right.
So what that means is you can be angry at a situation because of what happened. There was injustice there. And I became so angry. I mean, I obviously took the blame anyways because I felt like, oh my God, I didn't protect my daughter. But I became so enraged. And we had to walk out that process too because I wanted to go and get this guy
Yeah.
and basically beat the crap out of him.
Yeah. I didn't find out till years later, a couple years later, and I still want to go.
Yeah.
Today,
It's
right
hard.
this minute, I would still, yeah,
Absolutely. As a mama,
want to confront.
as a mama, you
Yeah.
want to protect your babies. The Bible even says, what is it? Foolish is a person who runs into like a mother bear with her cubs.
Right.
In other words, that mother bear is going to protect her baby cubs
Sure.
any way possible. So we did heal a lot, and I wanted you to. Because we're kind of snipping and fast forwarding, but we're wanting to get to a lot of the meat. One of the incidents that God brought healing was through Liam. And I'll let you tell that story. But I wanted to share with all you women, because I think that Jess can explain this probably just better than I could. One of the conversations that they talked to her at Embrace Grace was that she could be a virgin again. And we both looked at each other like, what? Because, I mean, me too. I was sexually assaulted too.
Right.
I didn't know that this could happen, right?
Right.
And so
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So because your virginity isn't just based on your flesh.
Right.
It's based on your heart. So I wanted you to talk about that because we're going to go into the redemption part of what God did for you through Liam and what healing God brought you just in stages, right?
Yeah. So Embrace Grace wasn't just for the pregnant ladies. They had a little group for the baby daddies, right? That's what they're called. So he would come with me, and he would go to the guys group, and I would go to the girls group, and in the guys group they would just minister to him like you got to show the woman how to love her correctly, and so they would just kind of minister to like save yourself for each other for when you get married. And so then I guess I didn't know that they had talked about that, and they had been talking about that to us in Embrace Grace, and so I was kind of like, okay. I didn't want to say anything because as a woman, you want to be told that. You don't want to sit there and say, hey, I mean, you can obviously say, hey, I don't want to have sex, like let's wait till marriage. But for me, with everything that I had gone through, I wanted somebody to tell me, listen, you are more than this. Like you're more than to have sex with, way more value, and I want things to be different, right? So I was just like praying in my head, okay, like I hope that happens one day. If not, whatever, okay. And then we come home from an Embrace Grace group one night, and Ledio looks at me, and he's just like, I want to wait for you. And I'm like, explain yourself. I don't know what you're saying, And he was like, I want you to know that I have more value in you than all these other people that have been in my life, and you're worth more than that, and I love you. And I like cried. I was like, oh my goodness, because it was something, when you pray for something, you're like, is it really going to come though? And then it
Right,
came.
right.
And so, yeah, so I think God definitely restored that in me just because I prayed for that to happen and it happened. And I really didn't know how to take it. But yeah, God was so good. I thought
So
so.
he restored, you could say he restored your virginity.
Yeah,
Right.
and the
And
innocence.
what is that, sorry, what does that mean to you so that women can understand?
For me, so I know physically, obviously, people are like, "What are you talking about? You've got a 2-year-old. Obviously, you're not a virgin." And virginity is not just physical; it's definitely in the heart because when you're sleeping with people, you're sleeping with their souls too.
Right.
You
And you're
know,
creating
and you're
soul
creating
ties.
soul ties, and so
Good
it's
point.
like, um, it just made me. I feel like a virgin again because it was like in my heart we weren't having sex, so it's kind of like I'm brand new. God just kind of like, I don't know, I just feel like he poured over me my my one thing that I thought I lost.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Amen.
and so I got that back in that little conversation. But yeah, so you don't have to be in the physical. You can make a decision today and continue through that decision until you find your husband,
The right one.
the right one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up. And that in my mind, that helped to solidify Ledio, who is now your fiance, that he is the right one.
Yeah.
And God did put you guys together, and it wasn't the way that you would have picture
No.
book done it.
Definitely
Right.
not the beginning.
But
No.
it is the right thing. And both of you have grown and worked together
Yeah.
to make it the right thing.
Yeah, and like we weren't together this entire time. Like we both of us had to separate
Mm-hmm.
ourselves because we both needed healing. We both needed to grow without each other.
Right.
Because you can grow as a couple and you can grow and blossom, but if you're not growing individually, at least every day, something new, like individually, you're gonna break. And I
Right.
feel like that's
Right.
not gonna be healthy. So we split up for a year. We both got healthy because at that time I was like, I can't be with my baby daddy. Just like every girl's like, I can't deal with him. I could not deal with him. So we had to separate and get healing. And
That was hard too because I
Right.
remember one of the things, and the reason I want you to touch on this is because one of the things that you mentioned was if I break up with him, that means I'm going to be alone and I'm going to be, again, your stereotypical
Yes.
Right.
single teenage mother
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that was, I think, one of my biggest fears because it's like I didn't want to be by myself, even though I had my mom and my brother and his wife now. I didn't want to be alone, going to
Right.
the store alone, a
Yeah.
single mom. And so I was just kind of like,
A statistic.
yeah,
You
I
didn't
felt
want
like
to.
a
You didn't want to.
statistic.
Yeah.
And
Didn't
I
want
was
to be
still
there.
in high school, y'all. So, like, I had not graduated until a year later, which I finally did. I got my high school diploma. I was homeschooled. So, I actually got, what is it? I was able to walk this stage,
Oh, yeah.
because I
Yeah.
had a homeschool
Graduation. The whole
graduation. Yeah.
ceremony. Yeah.
So, I wanted to make sure that, like, listen, I know people are going to put stipulations on you.
Restrictions.
Restrictions, yeah,
Yeah.
on you. But you can do it, like
Yeah.
Titles. There's
Right.
different titles
yeah.
on
Or
you.
yeah,
Single
stereotypes.
mom, you're not going to graduate.
Yeah.
You're just going to drop out. You're going to be on welfare.
No.
And so, yeah, I definitely overcame that. So that was good. But yeah, I just didn't want to be by myself because people just look at you different. I mean, after I would go to church still, and people would look at my ring finger, see that there's no ring, look at my belly, see that there's a big baby in there, look back at my hand, and just kind of look at me with disgust, like, you're pregnant and you're in this church, without having a wedding ring. And so, I mean,
Where's the
people,
love?
it's not good, It's
Yeah. Where's the love?
yeah.
It's weird, but I remember when you went through that, and yet they had no idea what was going on the inside because God was
Right.
doing a deep healing
Yeah.
on the inside. And yet, just because you didn't have a tangible wedding ring on,
Right.
He really did bring that love into your life again,
Right.
which leads us to the night of the retreat.
Yeah.
Right? That was
Yeah.
actually the coolest night ever.
Yeah. So going back to the worship, right? So it happened in a woman's baptismal during a worship service. And so, again, that made me hate worship and believe that God just really didn't care about me. So fast forward, I'm going to this women's retreat that was a part of Embrace Grace, and there was only a select few that went, and I was able to go, and that was definitely God. Selena was definitely hearing from God because this is where my healing began.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember who was, I think it was Carrie Oles.
Carrie Oles was
Was
speaking that night.
speaking that night, and we were all just kind of gathered around the couch, and she was like, I really feel like God wants me to put on a worship song, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, check out.
So I went to the bathroom, and I actually lost my mucus plug in that bathroom, and so then I was like, oh my God, okay. I'm just in so much pain. Like the entire day I was having contractions, but my mom was like, you're not going to the hospital yet because I'm sure you're not dilated. And so I was legit having contractions
Right.
24 hours, like every 5 minutes apart. And so I was in terrible pain, but I still wanted to be at that retreat because I knew that He had something in store for me. So she was like, okay, so I'm going to play this worship song. So I skipped like the first little intro, and I went to the bathroom, came back, and I sat down, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to close my eyes like everybody does.
Wait, I have to interject because one of the things she said was, everybody, we need to worship in our pain.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yeah. So she was telling everybody, she was telling the story of Job, actually. And the story of Job is he's worshiping God even through everything that he's losing
Right.
and all of his pain. And so that kind of resonated with me because I was in so much pain.
In labor.
In labor,
You're
yeah.
Right.
in labor pain.
So I went to the bathroom to go to go potty, and I got on my knees. Thank goodness that you remember that because this is like an entire part. But yeah, I got on my knees and I said, you know what, God, if Job worshipped you in his pain, I'm gonna worship you. And so that kind of broke the wall for me, to get down and worship. So I went back out there and I sat down, and I was still kind of, even though I told him I was going to worship him in the pain, I still kind of had like a guard up. But then I just felt like get on your knees, and I was like, get on my knees. I thought this is for like random, I don't get on my knees. Right? I'll worship, raise my hands, but getting on my knees is not something that I'll do. And I felt get on your knees, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, is this me? Or,
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I got on my knees, and the song that she was playing was What a Beautiful Name It Is by Hillsong. And so I felt chills. I've never felt chills during a worship song. I was on my knees and I was just worshiping. And so then after that, I was like, okay, well, that was a cool experience. I continued with the night. I had contractions still, so we were supposed to spend the night there. But we told them that I was going to go home, make sure I was comfortable in my own bed. So I went home, laid down, and every single contraction I had in the middle of the night, God woke me up. And when I woke up every single time, I was singing a lyric from What a Beautiful Name It Is. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And so that was every 5 minutes, y'all. So I'm pretty sure I sung the song like 3 times.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah, she was knocked out, yeah. But, so he woke me up singing those lyrics every single time, like What a Beautiful Name It Is. And then finally, we wake up, I go have Liam.
To the hospital.
Yeah.
Please go to the hospital.
Right, go to the hospital, go have Liam, and then everything went smooth, and then I get out of the hospital, and I'm like ready to go to church, right, because of those experiences that I had with God. And so I think it was like a week or maybe even a couple days after I had Liam and I was back home.
It was a couple days, but I mean, just back up. We're going to back up just a little bit because I don't want you to skip over this part. This is a good part. I'll let you speak this way. We're sharing a mic, guys. So there's this little snippet part that God brought healing. So Jess has Liam the night of the retreat. One of your biggest things was you were crying because you were so afraid and you were so angry.
Yeah.
With Liam. Can you touch on that? Because we're going to get to the place where you are at the hospital and there was a healing that was done at the hospital, right?
Yeah, I was so afraid because I didn't want to breastfeed Liam. And I knew it was healthy for him, but I didn't want to breastfeed him because the last person to have their mouth on my nipple, my boob, was my dad. And so I just looked at it as it was disgusting, and I didn't want to do it. but I voiced that to everybody, and then my mom told me, you know, like I really feel like as soon as he latches on, there's going to be healing, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I get to the hospital, I give birth, and the like Liam is laying on me, and I like don't even know what to do with him. I'm not touching him. The doctor's like, you can hold him. So I held him, and then she was like, are you ready to start breastfeeding? And I like froze, you know, my body was like I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I was so scared, and my mom just kind of looked at me, you know, like when you're in baseball, they look at you and give you a nod. And I was like, for me, I take that, right? Because I've been playing softball since I was 6. So I was like, okay, we'll try this, okay? I put him on my chest, and the second that I put him on my chest, God healed me from the abuse from my dad. And so that was amazing, you know, because I didn't know that you could be healed in like one little moment.
Right.
And so, especially with a child, and I'm not married,
Right.
God used Liam to give me my innocence back and show me that God made breastfeeding healthy. He didn't make it for the male, you know, your dad to be on your chest. He made it for to be healthy, you know, to feed your baby and make him
Right.
strong. So
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, because
Yeah.
that's really hard for all of us to hear right now. You know, we're pretty transparent with you guys, and we're all crying because it was a holy moment at the hospital. And even though I kept encouraging Jess and telling her, as soon as you lay him on your breast, you're going to be healed. And it's
Right.
easier said than done, because
Right.
in her mind, she was probably going, like she said, yeah, whatever. I doubted, whatever. But I was speaking life, and I was speaking in faith, because I knew that God didn't have all this stuff that happened. You know, she didn't ask for this to happen to
Right.
her.
None of it. Yeah.
We didn't ask all this to happen to us. So I knew there had to be a healing wave come her way. I just didn't honestly ever think it would come in the form of a little beautiful child.
no way.
Our little monkey. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I just can't explain how much the spirit, the Holy Spirit's here in this room with us as we're telling the story, because we're all crying.
Yeah.
And just when you were telling that, the spirit dropped and just filled us all up and healed us again. I think.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, it's a
powerful.
powerful testimony, baby.
So I'm sorry, go ahead and let's continue, because now we're leaving the hospital, right?
Yes.
We're all in a better place. Um, you got that healing.
Yes.
We were in the room. I think Lydia was even outside the room. It didn't even happen when he was in there. So it was me and Liam.
Yeah.
And you're crying. I'm crying. Liam's sort of crying. He just wants to get fed.
He's just hungry. He's still hungry.
And we leave the hospital, and you are dead set on going to church. You're like, Mom, we got to go to church this Sunday. So actually, it was only 2 days. Maybe it had only been, I can't even remember. So sorry, everybody. I can't remember what the length was. It wasn't more than a week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
She
pretty. It
had
was
had the
quick.
baby.
I remember you telling me it was
Yeah.
very fast.
Well, so anyways, I was so excited to go to church after that healing that I had, and so everything was running late. It was my first outing since I had a baby, so I had to get the baby Liam ready, how to get myself ready, and how to get him in the car seat and how to get him out of the car seat. And so I was like, oh, like it was such a new journey, because it's not just getting in the car and getting out. Now it's like taking care of 2 people, and I was still a baby at the time, so I'm like, oh, like I feel like I was taking care of, you know, too many people. But anyways, so I'm running late. Church starts at 10 something.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was running like 10 minute. No, I was running pretty late.
We're all late.
Yeah, and so I think it was 30 minutes late because worship is like 30 minutes. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna miss worship, and like I was so excited about it, and I was like, you know what, it's okay. Maybe there's gonna be a great word. And so worship was already over as what I thought, because it was way past the time. And then I walked inside the church, and they said, you know what, we're gonna play one more song. I feel like we need to play one more song. And I was like, yes. So I'm walking up the stairs, and I'm about to like walk into the doors, and they start playing "What a Beautiful Name
Oh
It
my
Is."
gosh.
And that was that was my healing from worship, because I hated like that God let something bad happen to me during worship service, and so I was never looking for a healing from worship. You know,
Right.
I didn't think that God would restore that. I didn't even know that He needed to until it was restored. And yeah, He gave me my worship back, and that's been mine and Liam's song. And so, you know, if we're going through a hard time, of course, there's amazing songs out there, but that's definitely our song, and I'm so happy that He restored me with worship, because that's our
Amen.
biggest, you know, like that's how we fight is worship.
Amen. Exactly. That's our warfare.
Yeah.
Amen.
So,
Amen. I just want to say thank you because I
Yeah.
know it's not easy to
Not re-
share this
Mhm.
testimony, and the women who are listening, you know, you may be thinking, well, I didn't know that God wanted to restore worship to you too, or I didn't know that God could give me my virginity back, or I
Right.
didn't know that me saying no with my body was actually rape, or I didn't know,
Mhm.
you know, you may have all these questions, but I'm just here to tell you that Jess is a living testimony that if God did it for her,
He can do it for you.
He can do it for you.
yeah.
So is there, I know, so we're still healing.
Yeah.
I mean, healing is an everyday process,
Right.
guys.
It's walking it out.
Yeah. And I love the fact because, you know, there are days that you're exhausted, you're mentally exhausted. Liam is a very busy bee.
Oh, yeah.
He's all boy.
Yeah.
He's a very, very busy bee, but I'm going to just brag on you for a minute. So, Jess was not the statistic.
Hmm.
Jess graduated from high school. We got to drive down to Houston. She walked the stage with her cap and gown.
Yes.
She started college.
Yes.
She's taking 18 hours. She's even working. She was working a part time job, doing school, and raising Liam all at the same
All at the
time.
same time.
She winded up leaving the job to stay at home, but she's still now working
Mhm.
at home, you know, with her company and still raising Liam and finishing up college.
Yeah.
And has her own makeup. She does makeup for people. She
Her own
does my
business.
makeup.
Yeah.
This is
Her own business.
And so, those of you who don't know, she is on Instagram, and you can give them your Instagram handle because I know you don't have it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Never mind. But I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. She actually does makeup. She's done makeup for quinceañeras. She's done makeup for photo shoot.
Mhm.
She does makeup for weddings. And just if you know, one lady had an engagement party that she
Right.
went to, and she does makeup. So
She does
she's not-
excellent job.
She's what is it? Editing her Instagram, or maybe not. Anyhow, I had to brag on her because you don't have to be the statistic.
Right. You have a choice.
You have a choice.
You have a choice every day.
You do have a choice. So, is there anything, you know, our final words as we get ready to close out? Well, I'll start with Holly. Is there anything that you want to close out with? This was a powerful.
Yeah, it's a very powerful, emotional testimony. And just, Jess, I think I probably told you this before, but I'm very, very proud of you.
We're boohooing, guys.
Sorry, everybody. Paul will edit that out, hopefully. Yeah, just so I'm so proud of you and the woman you're becoming and the mom that you are. And Liam is busy, and she's got a grace of patience with this boy, and it grows every day.
Yeah.
He's very, very busy, and he's amazing. And she's just doing a great job with him and with getting her life going in the right direction and not giving up. Not giving up. Don't ever, ever give up. Keep pushing.
Amen. And I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to give it to you. I just want to say I'm proud of you because there were a lot of the whispers that we had to overcome together. These whispers were very hard. Unfortunately, church people are not always nice.
No, not at all.
And these people would smile to our face,
Oh my gosh.
but then they would talk whispers behind our back.
Yeah.
That still happens every day.
It still
Yeah.
happens. They did it to Jesus.
Well, yeah, not to Jess, but I mean, just in everyday situations, women in general, like we talked about in our last podcast
Yeah.
about the gossip business, they'll smile to your face. I had an incident this past week, so forgive me if I get on a tangent, but they'll smile to your face and then talk about you behind your back.
Yeah.
And why? Why women of God do we need to do that?
I don't know. I think sometimes they need to just feel empowered, or they themselves may be going through rejection. Um, that was a really hard time for us because you wanted to protect, and that was basically your bubble. That's why you didn't tell anybody. You wanted to protect Liam.
Yeah.
You were protecting, and you said it very plainly. I don't want anybody speaking negative words over my baby.
Amen.
I'm protecting Liam. I don't want to tell people. I don't want it to go out there because people are going to talk about me, and not because they're afraid. You're afraid. You just don't want anybody speaking death over Liam.
Right.
And believe it
Very,
or not,
very
guys, this
wise.
little kid is a very smart cookie.
Yes, he is.
Jess spoke over him so much. He's smart. He's talented. He's bright, and he is.
I
Yes, he is.
prayed, over his brain development every single day that I was pregnant. I mean, even now, obviously, I still pray over him. But yeah, I prayed for his brain development, and this 2-year-old knows what 3 plus 3 is, And
Yeah.
so it's like,
And
he
he's
is,
what, 2 languages, right?
Yeah, 2 languages, sometimes 3, because
Spanish.
Letty's family.
English, and
Albanian, yeah. He knows all of his ABCs. He can count to 30, mostly 20, but 30 if we, really try. And he counts to 10 in Spanish. And so he's so smart. And also, like, if you guys, just pray over your children,
Absolutely.
Pray over their brain development. Be specific in your prayers, because he comes through for sure.
Amen. Amen.
So we'll close out, and I just want to say, again, thank you for being on the show. I know you were a little nervous.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit really was in this place today.
Amen. Amen.
We heal every day. We grow
Yeah.
every day. But I want you to speak to that woman out there that may be going through something, and she hasn't said anything to anybody because she's scared. What would you tell her?
I would say, I know it's so cliche, but be strong, and don't give up, but also share what you need to share with somebody, one soul, somebody that you can trust, because once it's out in the open is when the healing is going to begin. And don't bottle it up for so long, because we need to get healing, because if you don't get healing, it turns worse. And so just be strong and know that you are worth more than what people say and what maybe you even think some days. But I read this quote, and it says, butterflies don't see their wings, only other people do. And so be strong, and every day, as long as you tell yourself, like, I can do this, and believe in yourself, even if you don't, some days some other people will see it and be encouraged. So
Amen.
you got this.
Amen. Amen. So we're going to wrap it up, and we just want to thank you for joining us on Today Broken Beautiful podcast. This is Chrissy Moore, your Broken Beautiful Ministries life coach.
And Holly Ibarra from Set Free Life.
Thank you, everybody, and you have a blessed day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.